Today we're going to focus on 1SE in 5th grade, and we're going to talk about 5.3L, which is dividing whole numbers by unit fractions and unit fractions by whole numbers. So here would be my first lesson, and what I do to help me organize is I usually have the front of my sketchbook as what the students will look at. So I'll have different sticky notes, reminders for myself, and then I also label it with an SE. For example, this is 5.3L. I know it's going to be for my Tier 3 students or students who are really struggling through this lesson. There would be a Tier 2 lesson or a lesson for those that just need a little bit more anchoring for the lesson. And I can have one line for those who just might need a simple reminder as to what to do when they divide by fractions. So like I said, the front of the page is what I show students, and on the back includes my notes or artifacts that I give to students. For example, this is a problem we would do together in a small group, and then these are artifacts I would simply give to the students to keep in their journal to use for next time. So let's go ahead and talk about this lesson. So here's an example. Ben rode his bike 3 times around the park to complete 1 mile. So I know this student went 1 mile and he had to ride his bike 3 times around the park. So here's my number line and here's my strip diagram of showing 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So I could show the students with this picture representation, and I could also label my number line. Here would be 0, 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, which gives me the whole. So here's some questions I've pre-wrote and thought about during this lesson. Why do you divide the number line into 3 equal parts? So that'd be the first question I would start with. What is the distance between the marks on the number line? So actually talking about the number line and how it corresponds with the strip diagram. And how do you know the number of times Ben rode around the park? So it's having them go back to the question and reread it. Ben rode his bike 3 times around the park to complete 1 mile. So we can phrase he went 3 times around the park, and that includes your whole mile. So how many times did Ben ride around the park to complete 2/3 of a mile? So depending on your student's level, you might have to draw a picture, you might have to have them use a manipulative or even a sticky note to go over that. So here would be 1 lap, 2 laps, which gets me to 2/3. So I know that he went, how many times did Ben ride around the park? He rode around 2 times to complete 2/3 of 1 mile. Here would be a sentence stem to help them understand. Ben rode his bike around the park blank times to complete 2/3 of a mile. So if they're struggling with saying the answer or understanding what they learned, I've provided a sentence stem for them to have their answer. And later, as the lessons go throughout, those can be condensed as well. Alrighty, let's go on to the next one about Ben. Now here I have my notes in case I wrote this a few days ago. I have my notes as to exactly what I need to do. I'm going to let you know what my cheat sheet says. It says you need 6 pieces. So I'm going to half these pieces. That's kind of my teacher knowledge. So I can remember, oh yes, that's what I need to do with the students. So let's go talk about the question. So we have Ben again. Ben was riding his bike and now he's making 3 cakes. Should say his friends eat 5/6 of the cakes. How many cakes were eaten? Well, I noticed here there's 3 pieces. So I'm going to divide these in half and see how many pieces I have left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I simply took my 3 cakes and I divided them into halves to get my 6 pieces. And now I can represent 5/6 as stated in the question. So Ben makes 3 cakes. His friends eat 5/6 of the cakes. How many cakes were eaten? So there'd be 2.5. So to go back, here's a sentence stem for my students to use if they do not understand. Ben's friends eat blank cakes. I'd have them restate that using the picture. And then I have some extra questions I would also ask them. So how would my model change with 2 cakes? So I would actually have the sticky notes out in front, and I would actually model this for the students and let them understand what happens as we do this problem with another type of problem. What do the shaded pieces represent? So here I have X's. What does that represent corresponding to my question? And then what expression is shown? So I'd actually have them come up with an expression as to what happened, the full expression. And from there, I would have them take an artifact and go back into their math journal with the exact activities that we did, so they're able to do it on their own. So they would divide the number line into 3 equal parts. And I might even draw a line there because it might not always be 3 equal parts. Label the number line parts, and then draw a point to show the given. So this would go in the student's journal, and that way when they come back to me the next day, they would know what was expected when I gave them another problem to work on. For example, this would probably take 2 days. So this would be one session with the students, then the next day I'd follow up with this session, and then give them the artifact, and then the next day they'd come back and we'd go over and see kind of where they're at, if they're understanding what happened here. So don't think this is all one big lesson. This could be combined into 2 lessons. So this would be one day and then the next day. Because remember, this is your students that are struggling the most with this SE. They're not understanding the basics of the fractions that need to be done with this problem.